Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This morning, since it's 12 on my end, it's probably one at other people's place. We want to talk about an important topic, often misunderstood in our communities: step parenting and the blended families in Islam, and why some people regret going into this route, right? Now, this is a crucial thing for both men and women, especially for those who remarry while having children from a previous relationship, from a previous marriage. The reality is divorce happens and people move on, but what does Islam say about it? The responsibilities that remain, particularly regarding children. One of the biggest misconceptions, especially among some brothers, is that once their ex-wife remarries, they are no longer responsible for their children. Some believe that their wife, new husband should be responsible on the financial responsibility on raising the kids. But as we know, this is Islamically incorrect. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear that the financial and the emotional responsibility of the child belongs to the biological father, not the stepfather, not to the mother, not to anyone else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 233, upon the father is their provision and their clothing in a reasonable manner. So whether the mom stays single, remarries, or even moves to another country, the obligation to provide for the child still falls on the biological father. Yet we see so many cases where men abandon their financial responsibilities simply because the mother has moved on with her life. We have many common situations that arise after a divorce. There was a bitter end to that divorce. So towards his ex-wife, and he decides he no longer wants to support his children. He sees her moving towards and moving forward. Instead of fulfilling his duty, he decides to let her new man or new husband basically take care of them. This is unacceptable in Islam. It is also the father's duty to provide food and clothing. It is still the father's duty to provide food and clothing and financial support for his kids, right? Mothers should not take this responsibility away from him. You did not take the responsibility away from him. Unfortunately, we have situations where many women, after a bit of divorce, say, I don't want to ask him for anything, having that. And when you do this, you're removing the responsibility of the father, and instead you putting this unspoken about reliance on the new husband. Sisters, you have to prevent, and you should not do that. Don't do that. If your new husband wants to help, that is his choice, but he should not be forced into a situation that is not his duty. Islamically, he doesn't have to do it. Religiously, it's not his responsibility. The father's responsibility is clear, and it does not vanish because you have a new husband, right? On the other side, we have a different situation where when a man remarries while having children from a previous relationship, what often happens is that the brother will bring his children from the previous marriage without consulting the new wife. These children might, stay there for the weekend or even for a longer period of time, yet no discussion has taken place about how their presence is going to impact, thank you for tuning in, how their presence is going to impact the household. Brothers, if you have children from a different relationship, from a different marriage, and they visit you, you must take full responsibility for them during that time. What many men do is that how is that when they bring their kids over, they drop them off at their new home, and then they leave, go ahead wandering around expecting this woman to take care of their kids for them. And this is completely unfair to the woman because it's going to cause issues in your marriage, right? It's not that the wife hates your kids, is that she never asked to, or she's not prepared, and now she has to suddenly step into a role that was forced upon her. Some brothers have the mindset, you knew I had kids when you married me. Yes, she knew that, but that does not mean she automatically becomes responsible for their care while you going around, run errands, socialize, go about your day. That is not her role Islamically. We're not talking about culture, we're talking about Islamically. So the situation is going to lead to resentments, frustrations, and can damage your new marriage. Imagine a woman who suddenly finds herself responsible for children who aren't hers, right? While her husband is out there doing whatever he pleases. Not only is this unfair, but it also stains the bonds between you and your wife. Some ways that you can approach this, instead of dumping responsibilities on your new wife, you need to have these open conversations during the sit down, during the courtship phase. Talk about how and when your children will be present in that new home. Will it be every weekend? Will it be every day? Only on holidays? Or and how is this going to affect the household in general? You need to establish ground rules. While a level of authority, right? What level of authority does your wife have in terms of discipline? Will she be expected to take on that motherly role, or will she simply be a supportive figure? Make sure that you are actively involved in your children. The children are coming to see you, to spend time with you, not to be babysat by your new wife. Like, make it make sense. If your ex-wife gave you the children for the weekend, I'm pretty sure it is for you to spend time with them, not for them to be babysat by your new wife or you going around your day doing whatever you please. No, your new wife, that's not her responsibility. Now, we're not talking about the moral or the traditional thing. We're talking about from a logical, Islamic, or religious standpoint. If a father spends the whole weekend leaving his kids at home while he goes out, what message is he sending? The children will grow resenting him, because why? Deep down, they will realize that their father was never fully present. Can we agree on that? A sense of resentment is going to come to the kids. Can we agree to that? And think about the practical risks here. What if something were to happen to your kids? What if and we're going to talk about a lot of things over here. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Amy, how are you? Hello, hello. How are you, Amy? Right? There's gonna be a lengthy session today. Um, Even if I'm gonna be talking to myself, it's gonna be uploaded publicly, so you're gonna see the stream again, right? Something happens, an emergency situation occurs. Your current wife doesn't have information about, your kids, your children's mom. You're putting everyone in a difficult situation, unnecessary situation, simply because you fail to have an open conversation. If you want strong marriage, brothers, one of the worst things that you can do is impose responsibilities onto your wife that she never agreed to. Don't assume just because she's a woman, she will naturally take on the role for being a mother to your kids. She might be willing, but she might also struggle, and she might also refuse, right? And one mistake that people make, especially when it comes to blended families, step parents, stuff like that, you forcing something onto someone into a motherly role without proper communication. The expectation is often, you're a woman, you should nurture my kids. Hmm? But she might not have the attachment to them. Love and care take time to develop. You cannot force it whatsoever, right? The more you push her into a role without discussion, the more you erode your relationship. As soon enough, you will start hearing, I don't even like your kids. I don't want your kids around here. Not because she's a bad person, but because she was forced into a role she was not ready for. And how was this going to affect your kids? Imagine how confusing it's going to be for them to believe that they're spending time with their father only to realize that he isn't fully around. First, you divorced my mom, you're not even there. Now, the new home that you bring me to, you're not here, someone else is babysitting me. Imagine, right? And think about the mom, your ex spouse. The kids are going to remember that you were not around every weekend that you say you were. They will remember how your new wife had to raise them instead of you. They will remember the resentment between you and your ex-wife as well. Right? You need to come with a mindset. So when they grow older, when your kids grow older, as the kids grow older, they will pull away from you because they will know the truth, what kind of a parent you are. Now, what type of mindset do you need to have when you're marrying a woman with children? One of the biggest issues is the wrong mindset that brothers come when marrying women who already have children. Some brothers believe that they're doing a favor to the sister, basically. They view that as an act of charity rather than a true partnership. And this mentality is really, really, really dangerous. There are several people that might call the imam saying, oh, I'm financially stable, I'm really doing great job, what to do. Can you find me, someone that has kids I can go ahead and take care of? So you can help them out, right? You're not gonna take the worst case scenarios to kind of fix the situation. That's not how a marriage works, right? You are not a charity case. Marriage is a responsibility, not a rescue mission. If a man enters a marriage believing that he is simply helping a woman out and her kids, then his intentions are misplaced. Yes, there is a reward for taking care of children that are not biologically yours. Yes, there is barakah in stepping up to being a father figure. But if your entire motivation is to simply help and not build a relationship or anything like that, then eventually that mindset itself will backfire. Right? Because every time we know that marriages have disagreements. And when those disagreements happen, a man who married you just to help you will eventually throw it back in your face. I didn't even love you. I did this as a favor for you. I married you out of kindness and now you're giving me an attitude? I took you and your kids in when no one else would. This is why you must make sure that this brother is spiritually conscious before accepting his proposal. You need a man who understands that whatever he does for you and your children is an investment with him, is an investment with Allah, sorry. Right? Not just something he's doing for you personally. Because when a man does something for the sake of God, he's not seeking validation from you. He's not going to use it as a leverage in arguments. He's not going to make you feel like a burden. And let me be clear, sisters, you are not a charity case. You and your kids, when you enter a marriage, when a man makes you feel like he saved you, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position where your dignity can be used against you. This is not different from a sister running away with a man because she believes she has no other options. If you lower your standards just to get married, you are devaluing yourself in a way that will later be used against you. That's just a fact. A human nature fact. So this also applies to step parenting. Go. Yeah, run, go. Right? A man marries a woman with kids and only does the bare minimum. He will later remind you, right? I pay everything for this house. I did this for you and your kids. It's always going to be like, I did this for you, did that for you, and it's doing the bare minimum of the bare minimum. Even your baseline needs are not even being really met. Your baseline needs are not being fully met. But he's going to make it feel like he's doing everything for you. We know that marriage is about mutual respect and mutual benefit. If a brother is stepping up in a role as a stepfather, he should be doing it so with the mindset that it's an act of worship. It's an act of worship for him, and his reward is going to be with God, from God. Right? Not doing it as a burden, not doing it to kind of rub it back and use it against you at some point. Right? For the brothers who are taking care of children that are not biologically yours, understand the reward in it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I and the one who cares for an orphan will be like this with me in paradise. So basically like this, joint his fingers together. If a man sincerely steps up and raises kids with love, discipline, sincerity, his reward is going to be Jannah. It cannot be done for validation. It cannot be done for control. It cannot be done for out of pity. It must be done for the sake of Allah, with understanding that these children are amana, a trust for you. And his actions are going to be weighed on the day of judgment. Woman, know your worth. Does this man understand that my children are not an inconvenience, but a part of me? Does he respect the responsibility that's going to come with step parenting? Or does he see it as a burden? Is he marrying me because he values me? Or is he feeling sorry for me? Right? What is you can say, the right way to approach step parenting? For the men, entering a marriage with a woman who has kids. Make sure you're doing it for the sake of God. Number one, do not make her feel like a burden. Mommy. If you take on the stepfather role, do it with honor, without resentment. Right? If you provide for the kids, do not throw it in the mother's face. For the sisters considering a proposal from a man who is helping you out, make sure his intentions are pure. Don't settle for a marriage where you feel like a problem, where you feel like an obligation. Ask questions about how he sees step parenting before you are committing. Set clear expectations about how involved he will be in your children's life. Be fully present to the men that are going to marry women that have kids, that you're coming from with kids. Be fully present in your kids' life. Understand that you, not your wife, are responsible for your kids. Okay, you are responsible. Don't make the woman feel like she's a babysitter while you disappear for the weekend or go about your day, do whatever you please to do for yourself. Yeah. We know that blended family is a test. It's a big test. The religion of Islam encourages men to step up and fulfill their responsibilities with dignity and honor. It is simply a manly thing to do. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was the perfect example. He said, the best of you are those who are best to their families, and I'm the best to my families. This is the standard set for men. For being a good man, it means being good to your family, stepping up and handling the responsibilities with integrity, with dignity, with honor. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, proposed to Salama radiallahu anha, she initially declined for 3 reasons. One, she admitted that she was an extremely jealous woman, right? She knew herself well enough to recognize that when she was going to enter a marriage with the Prophet, who had multiple wives, she said, it's going to be hard for me. I'm a very jealous woman. This is another thing. Woman, to my sisters, know your limits. Sometimes people, you overestimate, your ability to handle certain situations. You assume that, oh, she's my sister in Islam, we're going to get along. When you're in the reality of the situations, things are going to change, man. Right? You think that you can manage, but when the reality hits, you're like, I don't know. By then, you're already deep into it. You probably got kids. You're like fully committed. You're fully, responsibilities. Everything is neck deep. That's why you need to have self-awareness. It's very crucial. Don't put yourself or another person into a situation that neither of you are prepared for. Islam does not romanticize the idea of blended family or polygynous household as if they exist in some perfect world where everything is, seamless, right? That is the ideal, situation. Everyone gets along and, kumbaya, everybody's happy. But the reality is much different. Even during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? There were disputes amongst the mothers of believers, our mothers. moments of jealousy, and difficult emotions to navigate through. The interactions were real, raw, complex. If this was the case in the most blessed household, what about in our homes? Right? What about in our homes? Right? Salama's second concern, the first one was what? Jealousy. Second concern was she was older than the Prophet. Maybe she was in her 20s or whatnot. At that time, that was considered very old. Unlike today, when you're when you're in your 30s or 40s, we're like, oh my God, life. And the third concern for her was, the third thing was that she had children. She was taking care of orphans, and she was worried because remember her husband died, got killed, right? She was worried that the factor of having kids was going to be an issue. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being the best of examples, a man who took care of children, whether they were biologically his or not, he reassured her, showing her that men taking responsibility for her children, whether his own or who's under his care, is not a burden, is a mark of his true manhood. This is the standard Islam has set for men. It is not about, doing someone a favor. It is about treating a woman or her children or treating them as a charity case. You have to step up to the plate with the right intention, being honest about what you can handle, treating every responsibility with sincerity and ihsan, excellence. You understand? One of the fundamental principles in Islam is honoring agreements, and when it comes to step parenting a woman, you can go ahead and stipulate in your marriage contract that you would want this man to give you that financial assistance in your kids. If he agrees to these terms, signs that contract, then is an obligation becomes binding to him. Same thing, he can also put the same stipulation on your end to take care of his kids. This is the only situation where you can say assisting a woman with her kids financially becomes, an obligation upon the stepfather when, it has been explicitly outlined in your marriage contract. Right? This is why it's very, 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 very like gazillion times important for you to have this type of communication, conversations on your sit downs, during the sit downs. A woman should not have silent expectations that will later on turn into frustration. You should outline your needs and expectations before the marriage happens. You both are agreeing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayah 1, "O who you believe, fulfill your contracts." Similarly, it is an obligation upon the believers to fulfill the conditions of their contract. The Prophet said that. In another hadith, the conditions that have the right to fulfill are those that are by which intimacy was made permissible. So this means if a woman includes a financial support for her kids as a condition in the marriage contract, and the man agrees, he's Islamically bound to honor that agreement because he agreed to it. You agreed to this, and this is the part of our agreement. Again, this is why discussing expectations before marriage is necessary to prevent misunderstandings, resentments, frustrations, anything down the line. When everything is laid out clearly in a contract, there are no rooms for assumptions or disputes about responsibilities. Right? We're going to talk about another thing. The Islamic guidelines to conduct within your home is a serious thing that's happening in our communities, Muslim communities, regarding step parents, step kids, and we need to talk about it. We follow a lot of our traditions and our cultures. We lack, proper boundaries, particularly when it comes to stepfathers, stepdaughters. It is not permissible to try and being alone with your stepdaughters, right? It is serious. There's some devastating consequences in some household, which leads to cases of molestations, abuse, and just rape. Just horrific things happen. There are guidelines that we have to maintain. A woman must be mindful in who you bring into your home around your kids, especially your daughters. The reality is not that every man, even if he's a Muslim, is not trustworthy, right? There are some tragic cases that we know in our Somali communities. We can say state by state, name by name, family by family. Stepfathers doing horrific things, right? In blended families, if the proper Islamic guidelines are not followed, it can lead to unnecessary tensions, emotional harm, and even scenarios of danger of the children in the homes. Parent must be very cautious, set clear boundaries, and ensure that step parents, stepchildren, and biological parents all understand your roles within, the limitations of the home, within the home, right? The stepdad or the stepchildren or the stepmom role is distinct from the biological parent. A step parent is a non-mahram, a non-blood mahram, not a wali. He's not a legal guardian Islamically. This is an essential point that we need to understand to ensure that the proper boundaries are maintained within the household. A stepfather is not a wali to his stepdaughter. The status is that of a non-blood mahram, meaning once he consummates the marriage with the mother, the stepdaughter becomes eternally haram for him to marry. However, it does not grant him the same rights, privileges, or authority as the biological dad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that distinction in Surah Furqan, ayah 54. And it is He who has created from water a human being and made him a relative by lineage, nasab, and marriage, sihra. So that distinction has been made, right? The distinctions between a step parent do not hold the same authority and privileges and responsibilities as the biological parent. So a stepfather cannot act as a wali in the marriage decisions. The biological father is, or her biological father, or his absence, another male guardian from her bloodline, right, is the responsible for that role. He doesn't have, unrestricted authority over her as her father would. He's prohibited from certain actions, particularly in this case of, involving privacy, travel, and guardianship, right? One of the most important boundaries is that a stepfather is not allowed to, depending on case by case, right? Traveling with his stepdad daughter, that could to just prevent fitna and safeguard modesty and temptation, right? We know that these rulings exist not big is based on the principle, not our traditions, not our emotions or familiarity. This is why understanding the stepfather's role is very, very crucial. He's not a stranger, but he's also not a biological parent. You understand? Go to sleep. Right? The relationship with the stepchild is defined strictly by Islamic law. His responsibilities must be clearly understood to prevent overstepping or neglecting these boundaries. There has to be integrity. One of the biggest mistakes, again, is we allow cultural traditions to take precedence over the deen, over the religion. Oh, I've been married to so and so for so long. That's not the point. Emotions out of it. We have to take emotions out of it. Right? I think, it's we risk too often. We take risk ignoring boundaries, and when something goes wrong, only then do we turn to Islamic teaching to kind of clean up the mess. What if we had followed those teachings from the beginning? The problem would have never happened in the first place, right? It would have never happened. Now, the role of a wali in protecting women, many sisters, we like to take charge. Men can only be checked by another man. Men can only be checked by another man. The whole purpose of having a wali is for protection. A wali is meant to be a barrier, for you as a woman, between women and the harm. That's why, when your best friend, co-worker, colleague, acquaintance, whatever, that person cannot be your wali. A wali should be someone who genuinely looks for your best of interest, what is best at your heart, whether it's your father, uncle, someone other than, or even an imam that is genuine, that's gonna vet this man out. Men can only be checked by another man. There has to be some investigation done on this man, background, references, intentions. You cannot handle this by yourself. When you as a woman rush into a marriage, bringing a new, unfamiliar face man into your home, she must think about how this is going to affect your children, especially your teenage daughters, your teenage kids. This is the age where she's becoming more self-aware, her body, her attractiveness, and the way men look at her, right? It's also the age where outside influence is very, very heavy. Social media, we know that. Television, we know that. These things start to shape her thoughts about relationships, attraction, sexuality. So, unlike in the past generations, like 30, 40 years ago, when exposure to adult content was limited, today's youth are bombarded with sexualized images and messages everywhere. There was a time where, if a child wanted to watch something inappropriate, they had to do a whole lot of things just to get there. The internet was barely available. No, easy access to movies. Cable televisions was a luxury. Remember when you're watching something and then you fall asleep in the living room and then this commercial of some people some people singing are on, you're like, what? You waking up to just some random sad song playing, right? So children today, everything is easily accessible to them. You as a parent you cannot afford to be careless about about who you bring into your home during this stage of your kid's life. A stepfather is a non-blood mahram. Boundaries must be established from the beginning. Precautionary measures must be in place to prevent any situations that could lead to harm, misunderstanding, or any type of fitna. That's why we have to follow the Islamic guidelines. They are proactive, not reactive, right? We don't wait for the problem to happen. It prevents them, it's to prevent them before they start. And that's why when you rush into a marriage, lack of wali involvement and careless household dynamics can lead to serious consequences, huge consequences. The other thing, when a woman marries, a younger man, right? And there's a small age gap between the stepfather and the teenage daughter. The mother might say, well, this is my husband, then nothing's gonna happen. He's still a man, right? And we're not saying this to scare, mothers off into marrying someone, but this is the realities. Even if he has no bad intention, she's going through a phase where attraction and curiosity is like heightened to the peak. So be mindful of who you marry. Be mindful of who you bring into your homes, both the men and the woman. It's just human nature. The precautionary measures are set in place by Islam for a reason. For a reason, right? We don't allow mixed genders in our religion. It's not allowed. Even within blended families, it's not about trusting people. It's about protecting everyone from fitna before it even begins. In a case of a teenage girl who has just introduced to a stepfather, or a teenage boy who just been introduced to a stepmother, both are in a vulnerable situation. They don't even have any established relationship with these new parental figures, these bonus parents. They're at the age of curiosity and heightened awareness of the opposite gender. And if boundaries are not clearly established, it creates an environment where temptation, misunderstanding, and even serious harm can happen. Now, obviously, this is not all size fits all when it comes to step parenting or blended families. Every situation is different, but the key thing is that take proper precaution and act with fear and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the best of our ability. Right? One of the examples that I can give is like, if there's, you only have one vehicle in your home, the father needs to drop off the 16-year-old daughter to work after, taking his wife to work, then obviously he's not going to take the public transportation, because we know public transportation could be unsafe. So there are some case by case exceptions that do exist, but we're focusing on situations where precautions are completely ignored. Whether when a sister meets a man, they start talking on the phone, emailing, texting, and then within a short period of time, she marries him without proper research. She brings him home without knowing him, and suddenly the children are living with a complete stranger. That's not a stranger. Instead, this is very, very, very different from a situation if the family knows the brother well, reference has been checked, background check, left, right, center, and right, all the directions. The marriage was done in an open, transparent manner. The brother is righteous and is known in the community, righteous to the best of the ability. When everything is done properly, then the situation is different. But the problem comes when sisters run into a marriage without due diligence. Instead, now we're going to touch on briefly on the custody in Islam. There are some guidelines. If a couple have a boy, then when the boy reaches the age of 7, he's given, a choice to decide to either stay with his mom or dad. But with a daughter, then it's kind of like an automatic given to the father, unless there's other exceptions that's been made. Because, it's not okay for you can say, for the daughter to be raised by the stepdad and not the biological. There's a whole fatwa. I'm not really into that. I'm not learned heavily into that, so we'll refrain from going deeper into that particular aspect. What else do I wanted to talk about in terms of that? Fairness and between your biological kids and stepkids. Even within your own kids is difficult. Fairness is a huge challenge. Some parents naturally connect better with certain kids than the others. And there are times where you may feel frustrated or irritated by a particular child. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Even within your own kids, there are like, oh, this one just gets on you, the behavior, the whole thing. Sometimes this kid might remind you of someone that you really, really dislike, whether it's maybe your ex-husband, your ex-wife, right? And you have this unresolved personal emotions that can lead to subtle forms of unfair treatment. Imagine how difficult it is when a stepchild is involved. They're not biologically yours. They might not have been raised with the same discipline or values as you. Then they might be just very difficult or resistant to your authority, your personality. So being fair is going to be very, very difficult. But we have to strive for fairness, even if it's difficult, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, warned us against unfair treatment of children. He said, fear Allah and be just with children 3 times. Fear Allah and be just with children. Fear Allah and be just with children. So being fair now does not mean treating them all identically, because every child has a different need, different responsibility and circumstances. But it does mean to make sure that every child feels valued, respected, and treated with justice. Hmm? There's a great challenge, but you have to do your level best. Be fair between your children, be fair between your children, be fair between your children. 3 times. Right? And I know, a mom, these kids you carried in your womb, you have a particular connection with them and stuff like that. You might, cook more when your kids are around. When your stepkids are there, you're just like, morally, if you might not be Islamically obligated, but morally, just try to be fair, the best of your ability, right? Be very, very fair. As a parent, you might admit, being a stepmom and raising someone else's kids is hard. Being a stepdad, raising someone else's kids is hard. You know, um, when a biological parent is the only one that's been raised by that child, and a new spouse comes into the picture, the child, they might not like the new structure of things, loyalty to their, biological parent, and they might resent the step parent for replacing their biological parent. They might blame him like, oh well, my dad or my mom was happy and now you came, he married you, he left my mom, or she left my dad. Resentment. They're loyal to their biological parents, right? There might be emotional disconnect from the step parent, making it even harder for you to bond with them. Now, this doesn't just affect your relationship with the stepkids. It's also going to affect the parenting, your relationship between your husband and wife. A woman or the man might feel disrespected, and they might not do anything to correct it. You might feel unappreciated. You might feel, you're expected to take responsibility but not given any authority. You may feel like you're being forced to take, care of your children who aren't yours, don't even respect you. On the other hand, maybe you feel like you have to defend even when your kids are wrong, trying to be the peacemaker in the marriage, not wanting to alienate mm, okay. You're not wanting to alienate your partner, right? While not wanting to push your children away. So it's very hard. It's a very, very hard situation. Um, but these things have to be spoken about. The blended family, the step parenting is a role that's very, very hard, very, very tricky. And it takes a strong woman, a strong man to be able to, what is this saying? To be able to endure this, to be able to um be fair. Put user, what is this? Oh. To those of you that just came in at the latter part, we are about to end. I have, where you guys tuning in from? Where are you tuning in from? It's about to be 1 p.m. here. I mean, 1 p.m. No, 1 a.m. on my end of side of the country, the world. I'm in the USA, Nebraska. The two that are here. Where are you tuning in from? What side of the world are you tuning in from? But that's all I had. That is all I had for tonight. Today, your business card has been delivered. Oh, okay. I'm like, what is going on? I'm getting sleepy. No All right. Assalamu alaikum. Bye.